Unfortunately, I've become quite bitter towards Japan. I truly did believe that Japanese people loved children, cared about children, had strong family values. Now I've come to see just all of these problems in the society that aren't being dealt with, that really do need to be dealt with. To anyone thinking about having children with a Japanese person is, don't.
Japan is gaining an unwanted reputation as a black hole for international child abductions.
In Japan, it's legal to kidnap children.
Regan Haight didn't take long to realise she could never rely on the Japanese legal system to get her children back.
1年2ヶ月前に出てかれました。
How many of you had your children taken from you and now they are somewhere in Japan?
The persistent issue of parental child abductions by Japanese spouses has garnered international attention over the years. I spoke with Catherine Henderson in Tokyo to find out more about her experiences navigating the Japanese legal system or in a fight to see her children again.
I know this is a difficult topic, but why don't you just tell the audience a bit about your story and how you came to Japan and what's happened to you since?
Sure. So I'm an Aussie from Melbourne, and 21 years ago I moved to Tokyo with my ex-husband, and I've been living in Japan ever since, and we brought up two beautiful children here in Japan. And coming up in April, it will be 5 years, the 5-year anniversary of when he took the children from our home without my knowledge or permission. So basically I went to school to work one day. My house was completely normal when I left, and when I came home the house was completely empty.
I've been seeing a lot of news recently, not just recently but over the years, about how it's very common for the parent in Japan to take the child.
It's very common for the woman often to take the children back to her family, and the husband, then the father, to be cut off from his children.
But in your case, it was the opposite way around.
Yeah, it was. And in fact, my lawyers were very surprised. And my lawyers said, well, we never imagined a father would take the children. But since my case has happened, I've come into contact with, and I know so many Japanese women that this has happened to.
So the system here is that only one parent is allowed custody. There's no such thing as joint custody in
There
Japan.
is only joint custody during marriage. Right. And then after marriage and divorce, the Japanese law states only one parent can have what we call in Australia parental responsibility. Right. Only one parent can have custody after marriage, after divorce.
Right, okay.
Yep.
And I heard you mention in a previous interview that it's sort of like a race. So if the relationship falls apart, it's almost a race to sort of who takes the children first,
yes.
Because whoever gets the children first can then sort of have, in a way, I guess,
full control
yes. over what's happening.
Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't know that this was the system. I had no idea, so it caught me unawares.
And how does it work in other countries, say, from Australia, in terms of, say, there's a divorce or a breakup?
I think in Australia the police would be a lot more active and would take action. Okay. Whereas in Japan, when I went to the police on the day after the children were taken, the police just didn't want to, well, they basically didn't want to know. Right, okay. Yeah.
So they're basically like saying, we don't want to get involved, like this is
exactly.
a domestic issue sort of thing.
Yeah,
okay.
So they did actually contact my ex. They rang him and said, are the children okay? And he said yes, and they said, okay, well that's the end of it.
That's it, they don't
yep.
You can't do anything else.
Yes.
So what happens, I guess, over the last 5 years since that's happened? Like, are you allowed to contact your children? Like, how does it work?
So I went through what's called mediation, but mediation in Japan is quite different to mediation where I imagine in other countries. And in that mediation process that I went through for over a year, and it was through COVID and what have you, I really believed that I would be given an opportunity to at least meet my children once. But I was never ever given that opportunity, and no one even from the court even talked to my children until 8 months after they'd been taken by their father, by which stage the children both said what he said. They all just said the same things, which how likely is that three people all say the same things? They'd been told what to say by their father, and that was, they don't want to see me, they don't like me.
Do you know where they are? Like, how does it?
I know, I actually do have an address, so I know where they live. I'm too scared to go there alone. I'm too scared to go near there because some parents have been arrested by the police for trying. So it's a crazy thing. You're not going to believe this. But in Japan, the first abduction is tolerated. The second one is illegal. If I went near my children and my ex-husband accused me of abducting the children, I could be arrested. Right, okay. And that has happened to parents.
I think Japan, I'm not sure what the exact details are. They've signed on to the Hague Convention.
Yes.
Where I think joint custody is a thing in, the other nations. But it seems like Japan continues to ignore that. Can you give us an update in terms of, you know, what's happening legally, what international pressure has been put on them?
I went to Canberra last year and with a Japanese politician, and we met Penny Wong. That was wonderful. She was fantastic. She said that she was meeting that politician, Senator Umemura, because she believed so strongly about this issue. So I was really encouraged to know that the government has an awareness of this issue at the highest level. The Japanese government at the moment has had a study group that's been looking into changing the family law. And the study group has finalised and a report has gone to the government, and that has now gone to be policy. And the government is looking into accepting the draft amendment that they have to the laws.
There's been about 100 Australians that have, you know, suffered the same issues as you have.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that, I guess, that group and community?
So that's 100 children who have been impacted. I've met so many people that it has happened to, so it feels to me like it's very common.
Would the majority of them be Japanese people
Correct,
involved?
that's right. The majority is Japanese, but I also talk with parents from European countries, America, Canada as well. And you know, what's really interesting about the more people that you meet is the stories every story is different, but they're all very similar as well. There's similar points, there's similar problems with the breakdown of the legal system. And yeah, the legal system just is not working, despite Japan saying that the system's working well. It's just not working. And we can see that when you only need to talk to about 5 different parents and you can see that there's just systemic flaws in the system.
And do you think Japan's refusal to change, is that just the way it works here? Like, is it based on traditions? Like, this is the way we've always done it? Like, is there something else to it?
Money.
Money?
Yes.
Oh, how does it?
Money, okay. Unfortunately, Japanese divorce lawyers take a percentage of child support payments. So if their client is successful in obtaining sole custody and the other parent is forced to pay child support, the lawyers get a percentage of the money. In addition to that, there are some centres that are set up for children and parents to meet each other, and you have to pay to use them. It's said that the Japanese judges upon retirement go and work as directors of these support centres and get money. So the more cases where the judge says, if you want to meet your child, you have to use the support centre, the more money the judges make. And in addition, the lawyers make success fees. So the success fees would be if you win the divorce, if you are successful in the divorce and you gain sole custody, the lawyer makes a success fee. If you manage to not allow the other parent to have any visitation, the lawyer gets a success fee.
So there's like almost an incentive to, in a way, encourage an industry like this.
Yeah, so I don't believe it's the parents themselves necessarily that know about taking the children. It's the lawyers that are suggesting to them, if you take your children, you're guaranteed custody, I'm guaranteed a win, I'm guaranteed money, I'm guaranteed a percentage of your child support payments. Japan is very sensitive to criticism. They're slow to change. They want to just keep things as they are. In addition, the single mothers support groups who are claiming domestic violence, and of course there are genuine cases of domestic violence, they're very well funded and very organised and very loud. And so they complain quite a lot. But you know what's really interesting? I looked back at the history, going back, if you look in the 80s, in Australia and America and Europe, the same argument that domestic violence victims would be at risk was being used. But we're talking about 30, 40 years ago. So we now know in our countries that, of course, joint custody is the best for the majority of cases. Only 1% of women in Australia don't meet their children after divorce, and 7% of men. And sometimes that's by choice. As far as I can see, there's not really the conception of shared parenting, keeping in contact, doing what's right for the children, unfortunately. To be honest with you, I think there's a lot of immaturity in the way relationship breakdown. In Australia, our conception is that it's parental responsibility. You have a responsibility to your child, whether you're married, unmarried or divorced. And that's the way that we see it, as a relationship between the child. But I think in Japan it's more seen as the relationship between the parents, and when that ends, the children just go with one parent.
So it seems like the parents not really, like their emotions aren't really taken into consideration when it comes to like...
No, Japan says that they're acting in the best interest of the child. I do not believe that for a moment. Japan is not acting within the best interests of the child. They're acting in what's the easiest and the lowest conflict and no one having to take responsibility. Unfortunately, that's my conclusion.
A lot of people come here, they really love the culture, so unique, very different. But yeah, I just wanted to see if you've had any thoughts, what's changed over the last 20 years and your experiences here in Japan.
In terms of my actual experiences of what's happened, that's dramatically changed my impression of Japan.
So before you would happily, you were
Before
happy
that,
to be here.
I really liked being in Japan. I wanted my children to have the best of both countries, best of both worlds, take the benefits from both, never feel torn between the two. That's what I wanted for my children. I wanted them to experience the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, I've become quite bitter towards Japan, and I see where the systems aren't working and I see how the systems aren't working, and I see basically that the family court system is corrupt and it's not working. I truly did believe that Japanese people loved children, cared about children, had strong family values, even more conservative, perhaps more conservative than Australia, and were anti-divorce. I never wanted to get divorced. I don't believe divorce is good for children, but now I've come to see just all of these problems in the society that aren't being dealt with, that really do need to be dealt with.
Coming into Japan initially, do you feel like you were going to be part of the society, or do you feel like you fit in here? How did you perceive it initially?
Initially, I didn't think about it too much, but then I realised that you would never really fit in. But it didn't bother me too much because I was happy just to be myself within
society.
Yeah, and in terms of having children and taking them to school and childcare and all the rest of it, parents were friendly, people were friendly, and so although I never fit in, although I never sort of fit in as a Japanese person, I fit in as me, so that was fine.
And after the divorce, did that change in terms of you were cast away, as an outsider?
Some people I don't have contact with me anymore, and that's been very hurtful. It's conflict avoidance. In Japan, conflict avoidance is a really big thing. So a lot of those parents, I think, just didn't know what to do. Some of them supported me, but others just didn't know how to handle it.
Your children, so how does it work for them? Are they not, obviously the father would be saying things like don't contact you or whatever it may be.
Yes.
But if they could reach out to you?
Exactly, they could. Yeah, there's nothing stopping them from reaching out to me other than I believe their father and fear of their father.
And how old are they now? Would they?
Yeah, my daughter is just turned 19 in September, and my son literally just had his birthday this month, and he turned 15.
I don't know, but just my perspective is that if I was a child, especially getting towards, the late teenage years, and, that eventually they will reach out to you, is my belief.
I hope so. I recently met a young Japanese, half American boy who's 24, and he reached out to his American father when he was 23. So that gave me kind of an idea of a timeline, perhaps. I think once my children have moved out of home and they're no longer living with their father, I think that could be the timing. Maybe
for foreigners that are looking to come here, I think a lot of foreigners have this dream of, coming here, being part of the culture, maybe marrying a local. This perception of Japan is everyone's really nice and friendly, and it's like Disneyland here. What's your sort of advice or reality check for them? I think Japan is a great place to come and visit. I think it's a great place to come for a short amount of time. I don't think it's a great place to have children. So what my advice to anyone thinking about having children with a Japanese person is, don't. Okay. Or think very carefully.
No,
not even
don't.
That. Okay,
don't.
So don't
Unfortunately, the Japanese family law is not where it needs to be. It's very old-fashioned. It doesn't work properly. It's corrupt, and there's no safe way to have children with a Japanese person.
It's that risky.
It's that risky. Okay. Even living in Australia, there's no safe way.
Wow, that's pretty insane.
I would strongly argue against anyone having children with a Japanese. And that's really sad to say because my own children are Japanese.
I guess, what are your future plans now?
It's been really difficult for me to have future plans because I feel like my life now is kind of temporary, and it was really stressful to look too far into the future. I feel like my life is incomplete because there's a big hole where my children should be. So all I can do is just keep doing the next bit and the next bit. So the next thing that presents itself, to work on the issue, to try to keep working on getting healthier, I strongly feel that I need to get healthy in order to be able to meet my children and be as healthy as possible when I do. But no, I don't. I can't really see the future.
And I guess to finish up, how can people find out more about, your story? How can people, I guess help? I don't know. I don't know what the right is. How can people find out more and help if they want to?
Well, I have Catherine-Henderson.com, which is my website. There is a GoFundMe link on there actually. So if people wanted to donate, I used the money last year to go up to Canberra to meet Penny Wong. And I use it to try and raise awareness whenever I can, but people can contact me through my website.
I wanted to raise awareness where I could about this issue. So, but thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it.
Wish you all the best in the future. So,
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's a really important issue and we need as many people to know about it because in my honest opinion, if more people know about it, it can't persist.